Welcome to the channel. Today we will see When Lincoln Come to Pittsburgh by Dorothy Calhoun. Let's see the summary of the play. In introduction part, When Lincoln Came to Pittsburgh is a radio drama written by Dorothy Calhoun. Radio dramas have the challenge to convey something in a short span of time by means of sound effects and dialogue. Features of a radio drama. It replaces the visual presentation by sound effects and dialogue. The major features of a radio drama are music and occasional inventions by the narrator. This radio drama is an episode of American Yesterdays. It is about the historical visit of Abraham Lincoln, the elected president of the US, to Pittsburgh in February 1861 for a short while, and based on the short stay this play is written. One day incident in Pittsburgh. This play presents one day incident in Pittsburgh. It aims to project the American historical heroes in their own times and whether the other of the same period recognize such great men as historical figures in future. By stating the aim through the narratives, the play tries to present the view impressions of the American citizens around 1860 about the then President Abraham Lincoln. Excitement of the children. Dr. John Kocher is a very committed doctor who concerns more about his patients. Mrs. Kocher is an ideal mate of Dr. Kocher, who helps her husband in the treatment of patients. The visit of Mr. Lincoln to Pittsburgh creates excitement among the children of Mr. and Mrs. Kocher. Tom and Mark, the grown-up boys, decide to see Mr. Lincoln. Dr. Kocher states that he saw him the previous day and describes Mr. Lincoln's personality as 6 feet 3 inches tall, and his features are friendly, kind, and determined. By listening to his father's descriptions of Mr. Lincoln's personality, John, the youngest son, becomes curious to meet Mr. Lincoln and to talk to him. When the children share their desire to meet Mr. Lincoln, Dr. Kocher leaves for his duty. Before leaving, he asks his wife to meet one of his patients, Mrs. Moore, as she needs hope than medicine. Next heading is Experience of Mark and Tom. Mark and Tom leave home in the hurry to see Mr. Lincoln. John pleaded his elder brothers to take him as well to see Mr. Lincoln. They reject his request by stating that he is too young and it is difficult to manage him in the crowd. Even when their mother asked them to take him, they rejected by cautioning that he may get lost in the crowd and they have to see the president. It leaves John in tears. Spike, another young boy and friend of John, comes to meet John. John goes with Spike to meet the president with his mother's approval. Mark and Tom get stuck in the middle of the crowd and they could not see the president fully. They saw only his legs and head, and they could not listen to president's speech completely. Meanwhile, John and Spike enters through the crowd and see Mr. Lincoln and listen to his speech fully. Mr. Lincoln shapes his happiness to be in Pittsburgh and states that the people of Pittsburgh are privileged to live in the place, which is surrounded by beautiful hills. In less than a month, he is about to be inaugurated president of the US. He has too great responsibility as he could see unrest which may lead to war in the South. Mr. Lincoln encourages and advises John to do good deeds. He calls the development of tension towards the South as clouds. He concludes his speech with a conference note that in spite of the threat, the nations will see a rainbow above the clouds of war. Spike, a small boy, understood the president's speech literally by pointing out the black clouds in the sky. When Mr. Lincoln finished his speech, John, in an urge to shake hands with Mr. Lincoln, crawls under the legs of the crowd and goes near him. He introduced himself to Mr. Lincoln and says that he has many questions to ask. The impressed president appreciates his braveness. John tells Mr. Lincoln that he wants to be a great man like him in future. Mr. Lincoln encourages and advises John to do good deeds and to serve others, which is the golden rule to be followed. If the follows that he will be a successful person in future, John promises to follow his advice and leaves the place to meet his friend. He shares his happiness with Spike. Mrs. Allen meets Mrs. Goucher. The night falls. Mrs. Allen Goucher's neighbors comes to meet Mrs. Goucher. She comes to return a cup of a flower which she brought the previous week. They both discuss about Mr. Lincoln's talk. Mr. Lincoln's inspiring speech. Mrs. Allen says that she saw a small boy who remembered John shaking hands with Mr. Lincoln and praised Mr. Lincoln's speech as inspiring. Dr. Kocher and the elder boys return home. They worry about John as he was not seen around, and around that time John returns home. Tom and Ma convince John by stating that they only saw the president's leg and hat and could not even listen his speech fully. John repeats Mr. Lincoln talks and narrates about his meeting with the president. Tom and Mark feel upset about their mistake of leaving John. John questioning his father whether he could be a great man as Mr. Lincoln said. His father replies John that if he puts his full effort, he would succeed. The play ends with a promise to listen to another delightful episode in the next week. Conclusion of this play. This play presents one day incident in Pittsburgh. It aims to project the American historical heroes in their own times and whether the others of the same period recognize such great men as historical figures in future. Thanks for watching this video, viewers, and please subscribe my channel. Thank you.